This is your reality check.
Hi everyone, and welcome to The Reality Check, the weekly Canadian show that explores a wide range of controversies and curiosities using science and critical thinking. I'm your host, Darren McKee, and with me, as usual-ish, is Adam Gardner.
What's up, cuboids?
And remotely, we have the Toronto crew. We've been away for a while, and we're happy to be back, still trying to make segments work in the midst of a pandemic and all our various personal issues that are getting in the way, myself included. But we have a great show for you today. Adam is going to talk to us about UFOs.
That's right.
And Cristina is going to explore whether bone china contains any actual bone. But first, does in-office work increase innovation? As there has been progress on vaccinating parts of the world, workers in those countries may soon be returning to in-office work. Many thought remote work would lead to productivity drops, but this didn't happen, or at least it didn't happen initially. But what about being innovative? In many corporate cultures, there's a belief in the idea of serendipitous encounters fostering innovation. So much so that some buildings are designed to have people bump into each other more than a typical office layout would.
I thought that was organic.
Further, if you listen to those who work in informal shared office spaces like Impact Hub or co-working Space Hatch 64, they say it's great. Even a reinvention of the bodegas of the Renaissance, where those seeking different trades would work alongside one another, or perhaps the coffee shops of Vienna in discussing logical positivism in the early 20th century. But is there anything more objective? A nice overview article, perhaps. Indeed there is, by Claire Kane Miller for the New York Times on June 23rd. She wrote a piece called, "Do Chance Meetings at the Office Boost Innovation? There's No Evidence of It."
Oh.
Yeah, that's a nice solid headline.
It's unfortunate.
End of segment.
Or it's
Not
fortunate
quite.
if you want to stay at home.
Yeah. Subheadline, for some, the office even stifles creativity. As the pandemic eases in the United States, a few companies seek to reimagine what work might look like. End quote.
Interesting.
So Miller provides an overview of how Yahoo, the company, banned working from home in 2013, Tim Cook and Jamie Dimon both being supportive of in-office work, increasing innovation, but then writes, quote, "Yet people who study the issue say there is no evidence that working in person is essential for creativity and collaboration. It may even hurt innovation, they say, because the demand for doing office work at a prescribed time and place is a big reason the American workplace has been inhospitable for many people." That seems damning as a quotation, so where are the studies? Well, unfortunately, there aren't that many, or any of the type one would want, because there's so many different confounds. Well, let's go through the article. So after the paragraph I quoted to you, Miller quotes Dan Spalding, saying that it is a bias to think people can only collaborate face-to-face, and that, now I'm quoting Miller, quoting Spalding, "And I'd ask how much creativity and innovation have been driven out of the office because you weren't in the insider group, you weren't listened to, you didn't go to the same places as the people in positions of power were gathering," end quote. This seems like a fair point, but Spalding is behind Zillow, a company where almost everyone works remotely most of the time. Now, I don't think this is a conflict of interests of the type of big pharma, as he's not selling remote work itself, and one would think his company cares about productivity and making a profit, and it works for them. It's not really an objective assessment of the issue, though, with details provided.
Sure.
So then, in the article, Miller discusses how back in the 1930s, people thought open office layouts would increase creativity among the workers.
In the 1930s.
Yeah.
This open and closed office has really swung around a lot.
I know. It surprised me too it went back that far.
Wow.
But work by Professor Ethan Bernstein found that current open offices lead to fewer face-to-face interactions, 70% fewer actually. People tended to wear headphones to block out distractions, meeting other people.
That's modern, because obviously in the 30s, I don't think that was really...
They didn't have headphones. Well, yeah, they didn't have their Discmans.
They were wearing earmuffs.
Gramophone headphones?
Yes.
Now, this makes sense, and Adam covered open offices on episode 287 back in 2014. But variables related to open office designs should not be conflated with whether working in office increases innovation compared to working remotely. They're definitely related, but they're not the same thing. One would want to compare different types of offices and work to better understand the landscape of innovation. Miller acknowledges when she writes, quote, "In-office work is essential for some innovation jobs, like those that involve physical objects, and beneficial for some people, like newly hired employees and those seeking mentors. Yet some creative professionals, like architects and designers, have been surprised at how effective remote work has been during the pandemic, while scientists and academic researchers have long worked on projects with colleagues in other places." End quote. Yeah. Which is true. Many people collaborate internationally one way or another. So it's very much going to depend on the nature of the work. The New York Times piece also interviews Judith Olson, who has studied how teamwork is affected by remote work, and she says that with so many online collaborative technologies, think your Google Docs, where I'm reading this from, or Slack or other things, being remote matters less because we are approximating the office environment. Yeah. Back to Ethan Bernstein, and he says it makes sense to think that people bumping into each other are more likely to chat, but when you think of what they're talking about, is it really going to be about innovations related to work? He says there's no real evidence to support this.
It depends on the people, depends on a lot of things, yeah.
Did you see the game last night? Did you see the movie? This is what people tend to chat about.
Yes.
Further, Miller argues that requiring people to be in the office can hurt innovation because many people have greater difficulties being there in person. For example, those with caregiving responsibilities or those with disabilities, or even those who have a longer commute and can't do the after-hours socializing. And she also mentions women and minorities and some of the difficulties they face. Additionally, and perhaps in contrast, remote work may equalize things as everyone is in a Zoom box. Others might feel more comfortable to attend meetings or share thoughts by typing. Or diversity of workers could increase because of fewer geographical constraints related to hiring of who's willing to work where and do what work.
That opens up your pool a lot.
Well, certainly. There's very few of a particular minority group in a particular state that might change things with remote work accessibilities.
Sure.
And while there is some truth to these claims, there's even more confounding going on here, and some of these statements seem more like conjecture than those backed up by reliable data. Now, to provide some summary and analysis, I had hoped that the article would be more clear, but it seems like there isn't strong evidence either way. Going back to that first excerpt, quote, "Yet people who study the issue say there's no evidence that working in person is essential for collaboration and creativity. It may even hurt innovation, they say, because the demand for doing office work at a prescribed time and place is a big reason the American workplace has been inhospitable for many people." Let's look at those words. People who study the issue is essential for creativity and collaboration. Essential. Well, no, the argument really isn't whether it's essential, it's whether it boosts it or helps it or increases it. So already that's a bit of a switcheroo there, right? Yes, almost nothing is necessarily the case for something else. It may even hurt innovation, right? And because it has been inhospitable for many people, well, okay, some people, sure, and it may, but does it actually? Does it not? So one would need a more rigorous study with enough employees to tease out meaningful conclusions. For example, something like working remotely compared to traditional office work, compared to open office, how this was experienced for different demographics, and having some quantifiable metric for innovation, which itself is going to be very difficult unless maybe it's like filing patents, which you could count. The article also assumed going on maternity leave shouldn't affect your pay, but I don't think that's a clearly agreed upon thing. It shouldn't decrease your pay, but you'll be comparably behind in your career. And this is, granted, the United States has some weird maternity leave compared to most of the developed world, yes. But we don't want to penalize people who don't have kids. It's your choice. I don't think you should be docked, but someone else will be 9 months further in your career if you take 9 months to take care of your kid.
Yeah, I took 9 months parental leave twice, and luckily my employment situation is such that I still got my increments and my experience still counted and things like that. But at the end of the day, I wasn't working. I wasn't there. So it's right. There's a gap in my experience there.
Mm-hmm. Second, demographic diversity doesn't necessarily increase innovation either. That's another assumption. Demographic diversity is a proxy for, we'll say, something like idea diversity or conceptual diversity or innovative diversity, which then is supposedly the thing that people are measuring.
Yes.
But depending on which company you work for, people want ideological conformity with demographic diversity.
Yes, it depends on what ideology they want diversity in. Sometimes they want different ideas, maybe not political ideas, or maybe they want different political ideas, but not different kinds of ideas.
But what I mean is, if you work here, say, we want you to think software is really important, our software is the best, and everyone should use our software.
Sure.
Well, yes, that's what we want you to say because you work for this company.
Well, maybe we can disagree on what programming language is best for.
Well, you calm yourself, Adam. Even if one managed to implement this study that I've just outlined and looked at all this, generalization from those findings to different types or sizes of offices and work may not be valid. Really tricky things here. Consequently, I provisionally conclude that there isn't a strong argument that in-office work increases collaboration and innovation, but there also isn't a lot of strong evidence in-office work itself harms innovation.
There's going to be sort of outside of the standard workplace conversations between certain groups of people, right? So I would go to the gym a lot, so I would chat with people at the gym, and sometimes they'd be like, "Hey, Adam, I wanted to ask you this thing," and it's work-related, and it's like, boom, we have a 3-minute work-related conversation, and something actually happened there, and it's great. Or there would always be conversations that would happen amongst smokers. Well, I'm not part of that group, I've never been part of that group, where it's just people you go out to lunch with, so that's interesting. And the other is just due to the timing of this pandemic, like, at least my workplace, we started out and we were like conference calls on the phone and it was terrible. And then by the end we had like MS Teams and it's face to face, and it like completely changed the way we work, screen share, all sorts of amazing stuff. So the technology really is like at a point where it's just getting, I don't know if I can say 100% equivalent, but like really close, you know? And I think that's helped a lot of people continue to be productive and, in a sense, innovative probably with what they're doing, right?
Yeah, and certainly, as I said, if the tech is there to basically replace what was, that's great. And as you mentioned, there are a lot of, sometimes we'll say, socializing, which helps your professional development, which you could say working remote does equalize or level the playing field.
Yes.
But that's completely different from innovation. So if you want to say remote work is good because different people have differential access and these are all these current, we'll say justice-like related issues, sure, make those arguments. But the innovation one isn't as clear. Adam, has there been anything about UFOs in the news lately?
There has, Darren. The much anticipated U.S. government report on UFOs has finally been released. And after months of speculation, we have finally learned that it contains absolutely nothing of interest and does nothing to suggest that UFOs are aliens.
What?
We're done.
Spoiler alert, I needed a warning. You're going to break my heart.
Sorry, maybe I should like ramp up to that. So for a bit of history, on August 4th, 2020, the Deputy Secretary of Defense David L. Norquist approved establishing an Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, the UAPTF. So a UAP is just another name for UFO, which means Unidentified Flying Object. To me, they're kind of interchangeable. As I say all the time, and many others have made this same point, UFO doesn't mean alien craft, okay? Unidentified just means we don't know what it is. It's not that complicated. So while there is the possibility that a flying object or aerial phenomena which is unidentified could be a craft of an extraterrestrial intelligence, that is just one of many possible unknown explanations for it, along with weather balloon, the moon, a video artifact, a lens flare, an airplane, a bird, you drank too much, a lot of things. But drank too much usually is coupled with those other things, to be fair.
It's conjunction.
So maybe there'll be a lot of UFOs tomorrow in Canada and on Sunday in the US. The purpose of this task force was to gain insight into the nature and origins of these UAPs. Its mission is to detect, analyze, and catalog UAPs that could potentially pose a threat to US national security. So there's a lot of things that could do that. Aliens would probably be a threat to national security, I would guess. All right, so this is more specific. Obviously, a weather balloon or a lens flare isn't a threat to U.S. national security, but aliens could be. A craft or a drone from a foreign government, they absolutely could be a threat. And the fact that the task force is attempting to identify such a thing doesn't mean that it's aware that such phenomena are a threat to national security, but rather that they are entertaining that could be true. Then they want to find out whether it is. So this is not at all an unreasonable thing to do. The U.S. government is concerned with threats to national security.
Typical open-minded government.
So since this originally happened, there hasn't been any information released by this task force which suggests that there are aliens. But a lot of people have asked that I cover this, and I'd been waiting for the report to come out to see if there's anything worth reporting on. Now, the report in question was budgeted as part of a pandemic-related relief package, oddly enough, and it was delivered in June, and we're just wrapping up June, so here we are. Since then, a few videos of unknown phenomenon which had been previously seen by the public were confirmed to be authentic by the US government. So that's what a lot of the chatter lately had been, building up to the report. So a lot of these articles sort of said UFOs were real, confirmed by the US government and things like that. And these are really objects which are flying and unidentified. In this case, we can't confirm necessarily that they're flying, but we can confirm that they're unidentified. They are aerial phenomena, as the government task force calls them, which are unidentified. Proof of aliens would be identified. They wouldn't be UAPs anymore. They would just be alien spaceship. I don't know what they would call them. They'd probably come up with a new name, an ET phenomenon of some kind.
And if it was a weather aerial phenomena, it would be, just a WAP.
Rain, for example, if it was going to be wet, things like that. So 60 Minutes and others made a deal about some of these videos, which frankly aren't that compelling. The videos, I'm not impressed by them. Mick West of metabunk.org reported on this for Skeptic Magazine. He also reported on Yahoo News and on his own site. One such video is the Go Fast video. It's an object moving near the ocean. Now, the claim is that some simple trigonometry shows that it's moving about the speed of the wind, and this could be something as simple as a balloon. So it doesn't necessarily need to be aliens. And there's a green flashing triangle, which he says has a light flashing pattern which matches that of a Boeing 737 and has a triangle shape which is likely an artifact of the night vision device's triangle aperture. So this object is probably just out of focus and it's some artifact like that. Simple explanation that doesn't need to be aliens. Another is the FLIR-1 video, which appears to show fast acceleration, but this can also be explained by a sudden movement of the camera or a change in the camera's mode. And finally, there's the GIMBAL, the gimbal, which shows what appears to be a flying saucer, but which Mick West says can be explained as infrared glare and a rotating gimbal mechanism, which is a part of the camera used to stabilize. So finally, on June 25th, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence released the Preliminary Assessment Unidentified Aerial Phenomena. Including the cover page, it's 9 pages long. Not that hard to read. Probably read it in less time than it took to listen to this segment.
But you weren't going to.
I don't know if a lot of people did. They could have, easily. So it is described as an intelligence assessment of the threat posed by unidentified aerial phenomena and the progress the Department of Defense Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force has made in understanding this threat. Pretty straightforward. The report assumes the various sensors are operating correctly in identifying UAPs, but acknowledges that some may be attributed to sensor anomalies. I think that's likely. So like I said, could be a lens flare, could be an issue with the camera, these kind of things could explain it. Still, they claim that many UAPs are actual objects. They're often recorded from multiple angles with different equipment. So in that case, well, it's probably not something wrong with the camera if we saw it from another angle. So they cite poor quality reporting, which meant that they concentrated their reviews on reports from 2004 to 2021. In this case, they were more interested in the UAPs which exhibited unusual flight characteristics. The report admits that this could be sensor error, spoofing, or observer misperception. So they're not concluding that it's probably aliens for those cases. When UAPs are classified and therefore are no longer unknown, they are classified as one of the following: airborne clutter, so that's like birds, balloons, debris, whatever. Natural atmospheric phenomenon, right? So ice, crystals, moisture, changes in temperature, like something in the air that makes some sort of illusion, for lack of a better term. USG, or U.S. Industry Developmental Program. So a plane, a craft, or another device which is made by a government or industry program and is simply not identified properly. So the government made it. It's just, maybe it's not one of ours, or maybe it's not one I was aware of when I saw it. So I made a report. Or foreign adversary systems, right? So the report specifically mentions that it could be technology from China, Russia, or another national or non-governmental entity. So that's the kind of thing they're concerned about, for sure.
I kind of like the idea that there's like some sort of beautiful bird and it's just described as clutter. Airborne clutter.
Sorry, bird. You're clutter. So the other one is other. So they determined that the available reporting is largely inconclusive. The Navy and Air Force have only recently adopted a standardized reporting mechanism, but most of the reports predate these when they were set in 2019 and 2020. So it's hard to draw firm conclusions. And some anecdotes do exist for other incidents, but they weren't formally reported, so they can't really classify those as easily. They were able to successfully identify one UAP, so it's no longer a UAP. That's a large deflating balloon, but the rest remain unexplained. So this includes a total of 144 reports. 80 of those were recorded on multiple sensors. So those are cases where we know it's not just some sensor error because multiple angles saw the same thing, type of thing. Now, the report admits that many in the military and intelligence community may be reluctant to report UAPs due to the stigma that they may lead to. So in describing some of these anomalies, they say that 18 incidents appear to exhibit unusual flight characteristics like moving against the wind, maneuvering abruptly, going fast, or moving without a clear source of propulsion. These are the kind of things that think, oh, maybe it's an alien craft or a craft of unknown power, propulsion, something. In some cases, radio frequency energy was also associated with the sighting. Could be curious, could be something. So the report believes the UAP have various explanations, meaning that they aren't necessarily alien crafts, if any of them are. The task force is looking to gather more information and use artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms to find trends and potentially use that data to clarify what some historical examples may have been. Maybe you go back and over 20 years, you find these similar ones throughout here, and maybe it was an alien craft that went around, or maybe it was some other government's craft that's been in these many other places. And so the report says they need more funding because they're part of the government. So of course they want more money to do things more efficiently and to, keep the program going. So zero evidence of aliens. There was no evidence of aliens in the report. So the media must have said the same thing, right? The media must have said there's no evidence of aliens. Let's look at some headlines. The San Francisco Chronicle. Pentagon doesn't rule out extraterrestrial explanation in UAP report. And I quote, "Perhaps most intriguingly, the highest profile government account to date of what used to be called UFOs doesn't explicitly rule out the possibility of extraterrestrial origins." Ooh.
Well, wait, that's kind of fair.
It's technically true, but you're really leaving the door way open for something they didn't really hint at. The New Yorker said the unexplained phenomena of the UFO report, and this is the byline, seriously here. A new intelligence document examines 143 sightings that might have been caused by errant balloons, foreign drones, or other, a reserved way of saying aliens. So they got a whole category for aliens. Other is absolutely not a reserved way of saying aliens. I read the report. It's not suggested at all. Here's what they claim. Here's how they describe other in the report. Although most of the UAP described in our dataset probably remain unidentified due to limited data or challenges to collection, processing, or analysis, we may require additional scientific knowledge to successfully collect on, analyze, and characterize some of them. We would group such objects in this category pending scientific advances that allowed us to better understand them. The UAPTF intends to focus additional analysis on the small number of cases where a UAP appeared to display an unusual flight characteristic or signature management. Which part of that said aliens? It's just not there. Fox 9 said, UAP report, some aerial objects appear to demonstrate advanced technology. I didn't really get that from the report. The Express said, bombshell UFO report released. U.S. cannot explain over 100 sightings by pilots and Navy.
And what about all those bombshells?
Yes. And they go on like this. So the media is largely terrible. Some did a decent job. The CBC had this headline, UFOs may be real, but that doesn't mean they are alien spaceships, right? Really touching on the idea that a UFO is unidentified flying object. So that's great. But a lot of them just focused on that sort of unknown angle. But that's the point, isn't it? These are, by their natures, unidentified. Do we think that a task force would magically identify all of these unidentified aerial phenomena or find hard proof that they were aliens? I didn't really expect that, right? They're not going to go and say, because I can't explain it, I explain that it's aliens. That's not what it's going to be. They need to find some stronger evidence because they're not conspiracy theorists. So the conspiracy theorists will probably claim that the task force is hiding the real evidence of aliens. There isn't much we can do about that. Or they're just going to say, you know what, they're ignoring that because it can't be explained. It's got to be something that fits perfectly with my explanation that I have in mind. So the preliminary assessment on unidentified aerial phenomena doesn't tell us anything we didn't already know. UFOs or UAPs exist in that there are things which people see and sometimes record which appear to fly and cannot be clearly identified as anything. There has not, to date, been anything close to conclusive and convincing evidence that any such phenomenon are alien spacecrafts, flying saucers, or otherwise created by an extraterrestrial intelligence. While I remain optimistic about the existence of alien life outside of the Earth, I am not convinced that such life has been to our planet, or that if it has, that it's been observed by other humans. We'll see.
So you're not saying it's aliens, but...
It's aliens.
Thanks, Adam. That's a great overview, because I was reading a bit of that report, and I think, I don't even want to read these 9 pages. Well, because it shows you in bold at the front, like, there's inconclusive evidence, there's not enough data, it's yes, there's not enough rigor in the whole thing to make any conclusions. That said, and I agree with you that there's no good evidence that aliens exist, and this report does not indicate that there are aliens. I'm trying to think of, not the conspiratorial language, just basic logic. If somehow it was actually aliens,
Sure.
why would the government say it is unless they were forced into it?
Absolutely.
To be fair,
Yes.
if they actually found aliens, it's better actually if they told people there weren't aliens from their point of view, because it'd be chaos.
Unless they calculated that it was likely that we'd figure it out anyway. But you're right. If I was a government and I found aliens, I would probably make a fake task force and say that there were no aliens. Probably.
Right.
That doesn't mean there are aliens.
I know.
Because it's also consistent with the explanation of there are no aliens and they're making a task force to try to find it.
Yes, exactly. I just giving that, just voicing that viewpoint, which we don't quite share, but it is still reasonable to have that belief.
Yes.
Think better to act better.
Peace out, cuboids.
Today I'm going to talk about China. No, not that China. The type of china you pick up at flea markets or inherit from grandparents. You know, the fancy porcelain you put out when guests come for dinner. The fine china, but more specifically, bone china. Pat, have you heard of bone china?
I've heard of bone china. I couldn't tell you exactly what it is, though.
Me too. I've actually never given bone china more than a fleeting thought. But if you were to ask me why bone china is so named, like during a trivia quiz or something, my best guess would be because it has an ivory white hue to it.
Yeah, that'd be my guess, too.
Yeah, and it's kind of translucent. So, bone china? Then I came across a mental floss article by Ellen Gutowski with this headline: Does bone china contain any actual bone? The answer might unnerve you. Wait, what? Does that mean what I think it means? Mm-hmm. Man, did I go down a bone china rabbit hole after reading that. And I couldn't help but wonder if bone china is actually made from real bones. How did I not know this? I'm sure some of you listening are like, duh. But I even did a little survey of friends to make sure I wasn't the only one who missed a memo. Only one of the many people I asked knew the origin of bone china, and it was only because she researched its history after picking some up. She was admittedly as shooketh to find out that bone china actually does contain bone.
Wow.
Okay, so what is bone china? Bone china did not originate in China, although it is said to now be the biggest manufacturer of bone china. In fact, bone china was almost exclusively produced in the UK for the first 200 years or so after it was invented. More on its history shortly. Chinaware in general is fine and ornamental ceramic or porcelain tableware. Bone china, a little more complex. Here's a melange of definitions from Britannica and Wikipedia. Bone china is a type of hybrid hard paste porcelain containing bone ash. It has been defined as ware with a translucent body containing a minimum of 30% of phosphate derived from animal bone and calculated calcium phosphate. Bone china is the strongest of the porcelain or china ceramics, having very high mechanical and physical strength and chip resistance, and is known for its high levels of whiteness and translucency.
Are you going to get into which animal's bones it is?
I touch upon that, yes. Okay, so some of you may be going, ew, like Alexis on Schitt's Creek. The thought that there may be organic material in your dishware might be a bit much. But the bones are calcined, which means they are exposed to such a high temperature, there's nothing organic left. The bones are then crushed into powder called bone ash, which contains calcium, oxygen, and phosphorus. Now, historians trace the creation of bone china back to 1748 in East London by Thomas Fry, who had a porcelain factory located near slaughterhouses, so animal bones at his fingertips, essentially. He used about 45% bone ash to make fine porcelain, as he called it, but Fry also used other raw body materials in his formulation instead of just calcining the bone. It wasn't until potter Josiah Spode I and his son Josiah Spode II that bone china shot to popularity. Spode is one of the oldest makers of bone china and said to have perfected the formula and set the industry standard. Now, although the Spode history block, interestingly, does cite that, quote, no direct documentary evidence has yet been found recording the exact date of the invention of bone china. They're still credited with popularizing it. According to the Spode Museum Trust, Josiah Spode I incorporated bone ash from ox bones into his porcelain in 1796. When he passed away a year later, his son Josiah II took over. And Josiah II, he abandoned Fry's method altogether. He only calcined the bones to create their formulation. Well-known tableware companies like Wedgwood still manufacture some of the quote-unquote world's best bone china. Now, as you can imagine, when researching this, I did come across a few articles raising issues around the ethics of manufacturing bone china. It certainly would be fallacious to suggest that the making of bone china is cruelty-free. And obviously, the notion can be problematic for people including vegans, vegetarians, or some Muslims, so you may want to keep that in mind when you host your first post-pandemic dinner parties. Interesting side note, Pat. I read that there is bone china that is halal certified, and the wiki entry for bone china mentions Islamic bone china became available in the 21st century using, quote, only bone ash from halal animals, as well as more conventionally clay and a high firing temperature. Now, animal rights groups have been working to sway manufacturers into using ethical substitutes for bone ash, and some companies have circumvented animal byproducts by incorporating synthetic bone ash in their formulation. But calcined bone is tough to synthetically create, so the end result is just not the same. So I suspect, whether you like it or not, bone china ain't going anywhere anytime soon. So there you go.
Interesting. Thanks for that, Cristina. And with that, I hope everyone out there is staying safe and healthy, and we will talk to you soon.
Stay classy, not smartassy, and stay safe. For show notes or to discuss this episode, visit our Facebook page and website at trcpodcast.com. For general inquiries or to send a topic or parody suggestion, email info@trcpodcast.com. Help support the show by leaving a review on iTunes and liking us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter @TRC_podcast.